All right. First story today is from Yahoo News, titled CIA Trained Ukrainian Paramilitaries May Take Central Role If Russia Invades. And this story is, as far as I could tell, an official CIA leak. It's put out by the same author who put out the article along with Michael Iskoff on the CIA's plans to like kidnap or assassinate Julian Assange. And, nobody who talked to the press in that case was in any way punished, as far as anybody knows. And so, there's reason to assume that this guy's sources are people who are speaking at the behest of the CIA and not to like blow the whistle on they see as something as nefarious. And that's mainly the way this article is written. So for just a quick background here, I'm sure most of the audience knows, but in 2014, then the Obama administration, you have Joe Biden himself being a key figure in this, Jeffrey Pyatt, who was the U.S. ambassador, I believe, to NATO, and then Victoria Nuland, who was also a U.S. diplomat in the region. And they orchestrate, mainly Victoria Nuland, a coup to replace the president of Ukraine, who was duly elected because he was somebody who wanted to take not just a pro-Russian position. I think it gets oversimplified just to say that he was Yanukovych was just pro-Russian. He was willing to make deals with Russia. He wasn't going to rip Ukraine away from Russia, but he was also open to making deals with the West, and that was pretty clear from the legacy. But the West only wanted Ukraine to be in their sphere of influence and not to have a relationship with Russia. And so this was described by people within the foreign policy establishment as stealing away Russia's girlfriend and everything like that. Carrying out this coup in 2014 where they installed a new government of Ukraine that was very, very pro-Western and very anti-Russia. One of the steps that this government was going to take is to remove Russia from the Sevastopol naval base that's located on the Crimean Peninsula, which at the time was Ukrainian territory. Russia had a long-term lease for this base, and this was an old Soviet base. Ukraine, including the Crimean Peninsula, was Russian going way, way back. The Crimean Peninsula in particular to like the founding of America, I think maybe even the same year, 1776, that actually becomes Russian territory. But, Ukraine is a part of Tsarist Russia. It's not just like some Soviet state, some former Warsaw Pact member. This is a country that has a lot of not just historical ties with Russia being a neighboring state, like say the US and Canada, but, real deep ethnic ties with a huge percentage of the Ukrainian population actually being ethnically Russian and primarily a Russian speaker. And this is particularly true in the east of Ukraine, which is, of course, near the Russian border, and then on the Crimean Peninsula. And so in response to the Ukrainian government planning to kick Russia out of the Sevastopol base, Russia just annexed the Crimean Peninsula. And while this was a changing of borders, and not that this necessarily ensures that, that it was the greatest thing in the world that Russia annexed the Crimean Peninsula. You do have the fact that a vast majority of the people of Crimea then voted to join Russia. And Russia has spent a lot of money in Crimea on infrastructure improvements and everything like that over the past 5 or 6 years. And so that's been going on, and Russia holds Crimea. I don't think that's going to really change anytime soon. But there's also the area in eastern Ukraine. Again, this is the ethnically Russian area where, they broke off and started fighting a civil war against the central government there, or the central government started fighting a war against them, particularly, the bad guys that we talk about, like the Azov Battalion, the white nationalists, Stefan Bandera worshiping neo-Nazi esque, troops. You just go look up the Azov battalion. There's no doubt from the pictures, the banners that these guys march under, that they're certainly white supremacists, ethno-nationalists who want a Ukrainian in terms of, ethnically Ukrainian state, and don't much care for, people who speak Russian, or I'm guessing people who look different from them whatsoever. Yeah, so that's the civil war that's been going on, and that's really what we're talking about here, that this issue in eastern Ukraine. And so in response to this, in 2014, the Obama administration set up the CIA, and I think they called it the ground branch. And this was I guess, CIA operation. Don't know everything that they do, but one thing that they did in 2015 is they set up a ground branch paramilitary training facility somewhere in the southern United States. Not exactly clear where that is. I guess my suspicion when I read this article was in Florida, but that's just my personal suspicion. And so what's happening with this program, we don't get a ton of details on the program in the article, but that there is a paramilitary group that's bringing groups of Ukrainians in the United States for weeks at a time for training in a number of tactics that they label as defensive. Firearms, camo, techniques, land navigation, and some people who are involved with this project, talking about this project, say essentially what the United States is doing here is training people in the tactics needed to become insurgent leaders should Russia invade Ukraine. And I mean, this is absolutely as insane as it sounds, in that, we're training these people in tactics that will be labeled terrorist tactics. Also, we're talking about giving this group Stinger missiles. I mean, it's absolutely unbelievable, but it really sounds like the United States is trying to create another Afghanistan for Russia, almost to bait Putin into invading Ukraine, thinking that we're going to be able to bleed Russia or something once they do, with all these forces that we trained up. Now, for those of you who don't remember, that didn't really work out well for the American people, because in the beginning, yeah, we're giving weapons to people who are killing Soviets and everything like that, but eventually, those people are Osama bin Laden and the founding members of Al Qaeda. And with the extremist groups that you do have in Ukraine, you really have to wonder if that could be repeated here, that essentially you're going to give people who are extremists, who are radicals, who, again, we're talking about not jihadists, but neo-Nazis and white supremacists in this case, people who don't mind using violence, who, have very ugly beliefs. And to me, this is extremely concerning. Now, again, this article is written as, well, this is going to be something that an asset of the United States should Russia invade Ukraine. And yeah, I guess for a time, the Mujahideen was an asset of the United States fighting against the Soviets. It cost them a lot of money, not probably exclusively, but part of what ends up breaking the Soviet empire is the loss in Afghanistan. But again, it's also that same kernel of insurgency that the U.S. planted in Afghanistan that eventually, becomes the foil that also wrecks the American empire. And, the Americans did really bad in Afghanistan and the Middle East as well. So this hasn't turned out to be a great move on the U.S. part. They label in this article that the program has been a high priority, and that at some point, it's not exactly clear to me when, but the paramilitaries also, the U.S. CIA contracted paramilitaries are also traveling to Ukraine and apparently fighting on the front lines. And so, we've been hearing for years that there's always this low level of fighting that is going on in eastern Ukraine. People being killed by landmines, tanks or armored vehicles being hit with anti-tank missiles, things like that, sniper fire killing people. And you really have to wonder how much of that has been going on because of the CIA paramilitaries that are going over there and finding conflict to train the people that they want to train. And so, I find a lot of really concerning details in this article, but again, this is written as an official leak and is very much presented as, this is a good thing that the U.S. is doing and giving us more assets in Ukraine. So, just one more quote here is that they actually say that the fighting on the ground, that it turned the tide. Gains were made on the battlefield as a direct result of the program. And so, this could just be, and I want to say the thing about this is official propaganda before, it could just be that they're really trying to inflate the value of this program because they see it being maybe important to selling things to the American people in the time to come. But it could also mean that, the reason that the fighting on the ground is actually happening in Ukraine is because, at least partly, this program. So, there is another quote in here where somebody saying that if Russia invades, it won't be able to hold territory in Ukraine because of this program. And they say that this program is likely compromised by Russia, that Russia's aware of the program, and that Russia has tried to target. And the target was unclear to me if it meant like target for killing or maybe target for becoming a double agent like figure or something like that. But Russia has tried to target graduates of this program and has tried to assassinate others. And so my guess is that they've tried to recruit some members of this program for whatever reason, do whatever. And so man, it really is very interesting, and you just really have to worry and wonder like what the long-term impacts of this kind of program is going to be. Also, questions that weren't answered in this article, like who the hell is training and why the CIA or like the special forces are, this doesn't have to be a covert program and doesn't have to be done by contractors. So who the hell is training these contractors? Or not who the hell are the contractors is an extremely important question that I have here. Also, how many? They say people coming for weeks at a time. This has been going on for 6-7 years now. So who knows how many people that this has trained up. It could be hundreds, thousands. I'm guessing it's more than just a few dozen now. Over time they've gone, they've died, they've maybe retired, left the battlefield, something like that. So I'm sure the ranks have dwindled some from the total number of people trained, but just really interesting story here, and something that hopefully we get more details on. But I think is very important to understanding not only what's been happening in Ukraine during the civil war, but also, in the future, because some of the things we're going to talk about next, what may happen on the ground in Ukraine. We have to understand that there's CIA trained paramilitaries all over the place.